Direct News TV. September 28, 2023. Russia-Ukraine War Live, Defense Budget Hike Absolutely Necessary, Moscow. Moscow has said it is absolutely necessary to increase defense spending in 2024 as Russia looks set for a near 70% hike. In an unannounced visit to Kiev, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said Ukrainian forces are gradually gaining ground in their counteroffensive against Russia. Prosecutors urge prison sentence for Russian Swede accused in spying case. Swedish prosecutors have urged a prison sentence of up to 5 years for a Russian-Swedish citizen accused of passing Western technology to Russia's military. Sergei Skvortsov, who was arrested in a dawn raid on his suburban Stockholm home in November 2022, has lived in Sweden since the 1990s, running import-export companies. The 60-year-old is charged with 2 counts of unlawful intelligence activities against the United States and Sweden for over a decade until his arrest. Sweden's charge of unlawful intelligence activities is a notch lower than espionage. Prosecutors have argued that Skvortsov was part of a vast Russian organization built to acquire technology off-limits to Moscow because of international sanctions. The verdict is to be announced on October 26, the court said. Poland denies any of its helicopters entered Belarus airspace. Warsaw has denied that any of its helicopters crossed the border with Belarus. The Operational Command unequivocally denies these reports, a spokesperson of the Operational Command of the Armed Forces told Reuters on Thursday. None of the Polish helicopters crossed the airspace of Belarus. Missile that killed 2 in Polish village in 2022 was Ukrainian, Warsaw. A missile that killed 2 people in a Polish village in November belonged to Kiev's forces, Warsaw has said. Polish Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro said on Thursday that an investigation carried out by Polish prosecutors led to an unequivocal opinion that this missile was Ukrainian. 2 workers at a grain drying facility died in the blast in Przywadzą, some 6 kilometers, 4 miles, from the Ukrainian border, raising fears of an escalation in the war between Moscow and Kiev. But Warsaw and the NATO military alliance, of which Poland is a member, later said the explosion was likely caused by a Ukrainian air defense missile launched to intercept a Russian barrage. French Defense Minister and Zelensky discuss possibility of joint weapons production. French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu visited Kiev on Thursday and discussed the possibility of joint weapons production during talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the president's office has said. I discussed with your ministers very specifically how French industry can help you. We, of course, will continue this work, Lecornu said in a video published by Zelensky on Telegram Messenger. Lecornu and Zelensky discussed bolstering Ukraine's air defenses ahead of winter, the president's office said in a statement. Kiev fears Russia will conduct a campaign of airstrikes on critical energy infrastructure this winter. Ukraine's president said he was grateful to French President Emmanuel Macron for military assistance. He highlighted in particular the supply of anti-aircraft missile systems, Caesar self-propelled artillery units and Scalp cruise missiles. Belarus says Polish helicopter violated its airspace. Belarus has said that a Polish helicopter violated its airspace. Around 12:20 Greenwich Mean Time, the aircraft crossed the border of the Republic of Belarus, flew to a depth of up to 1.5 kilometers. At 13:22 Greenwich Mean Time, the helicopter repeatedly violated the state border, going 300 meters deep, the Ministry of Defense of Belarus said in its Telegram channel on Thursday. Belarus, Russia's closest ally, said it had scrambled military aircraft in response. EU extends Ukrainian refugees' right to stay until 2025. The European Union has extended the right of refugees from Ukraine to stay in the bloc by a year to March 2025, as Russia's war against their country rages on. The EU triggered its temporary protection directive days after Moscow's February 2022 invasion to allow the millions of people fleeing Ukraine to remain. The EU will support the Ukrainian people for as long as it takes, said Spanish Interior Minister Fernando Grande Marlaska, whose country holds the EU's rotating presidency. The prolongation of the protection status offers certainty to the more than 4 million refugees who have found a safe haven in the EU, he said on Thursday. The measure gives Ukrainians in the EU access to the job market, medical care and education. Ukraine war a factor behind rise in food prices as countries limit exports. Countries have imposed restrictions on the food they export to protect their own supplies from the combined effect of the war in Ukraine, El Niño's threat to food production and increasing damage from climate change. Globally, 41 food export restrictions from 19 countries are in effect, ranging from outright bans to taxes, according to the International Food Policy Research Institute. These restrictions have meant that households around the world are facing shortages of essential foods like rice, cooking oil and onions. Experts say food stocks that the world is able to draw on have diminished in the past 2 years and that increased volatility is now the new normal. Germany's inflation rate lowest since outbreak of Ukraine war. German inflation slowed in September to the lowest level since the outbreak of the Ukraine war, data shows, offering a glimmer of hope even as Europe's top economy struggles to emerge from a recession. Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year and subsequent moves to slash crucial gas exports triggered an energy crisis and sent consumer prices surging in Europe, with Germany particularly hard hit. But inflation came in at 4.5% year-on-year this month, down from 6.1% in August, according to preliminary data from National Statistics Agency Destatis, with sharply lower energy costs contributing. The last time inflation was lower was in February 2022, the month Russia sent its forces into Ukraine, it said. North Korea's leader calls for increase in nuclear weapons. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has called for an exponential increase in the production of nuclear weapons and for his country to play a larger role in a coalition of nations confronting the United States in what he described as a new Cold War. State media say Kim made the comments during a 2-day session of the North's parliament, which amended the constitution to include his policy of expanding the country's military nuclear program. The Supreme People's Assembly meetings came after Kim traveled to Russia this month on a trip that sparked Western concerns about a possible arms alliance in which North Korea would provide Russia with munitions for its war on Ukraine in exchange for advanced weapons technologies. China makes large purchases of Ukrainian corn, traders. Chinese importers are believed to have made large purchases of animal feed corn from Ukraine in the past 2 weeks, traders in Asia and Europe have said, providing a boost for the war-ravaged country from an unlikely source. The traders were unable to say the exact volumes, but several said on Thursday that they amounted to several 100,000 metric tons. Some estimates from European traders ranged from 500,000 to 1 million tons for shipment between October and December. A Ukrainian government source also confirmed corn sales to China, a key ally of Russia, particularly since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. I cannot tell you the volume, but I know that many traders did it and it is a good trend for Ukrainian corn, the source said. Russia has tried to impose a de facto blockade on seaborne Ukrainian grain exports through the Black Sea. Its exit from a UN-backed safe shipping corridor in July has made the Danube River Ukraine's main grain export route, and Moscow has been bombing port infrastructure along the river for months. Russia to cut state borrowing as banks' appetite for premiums grows. Russia has decided to cut its state borrowing plan by 1 trillion rubles, $10.32 billion, this year, Finance Minister Anton Siluanov said on Thursday, keen not to overpay as high rates have increased banks' appetite for premiums. The central bank hiked rates to 13% this month, as the weak ruble added to already stubborn inflationary pressures from high consumer lending, labor shortages and a wide budget deficit. We have consulted within the finance ministry, in the government, and decided to limit the borrowing plan this year, by around 1 trillion rubles to reduce the program, Siluanov said. Let banks now sit and lend to the economy, rather than the budget. A combined heat and power station damaged by Russian shelling, Kyiv. Russian shelling damaged a combined heat and power station in southern Ukraine overnight, the Ukrainian Energy Ministry said. Ukraine's national grid operator, Ukrenergo, had earlier on Thursday described the plant as a thermal power station, but an Energy Ministry statement said all thermal power plants in territory controlled by Ukraine were in operation. The ministry said the station had not been in operation at the time of the attack, and a warehouse had caught fire. The blaze was subsequently extinguished, it added. Between October 2022 and February 2023, Russia specifically targeted power plants and energy distribution systems across Ukraine. In recent months, Kyiv has frequently warned its allies that Russia will resume such attacks in the winter months, as it called for support in boosting air defense systems. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.